Here are the top 3 scariest stories that happen over FaceTime. Number 1. Sneaky intruder. I was home alone one night with my brother. It was around January during a snowstorm and my parents were both out. My little brother was in his room doing his stuff while I was in my room playing League of Legends on my computer. My brother knocks on my door and asks if it's possible for me to drive him out to his friend's house. I agree to drive him out despite the snowstorm, only because I have a Pathfinder, which can hold its own even under these snowy and icy conditions, and his friend only lives about 5 minutes away from our house. So we got into the car and left, and I was back home literally 15 minutes later. I entered the house and met it just as I had left it, quiet and empty. I went back to playing League of Legends on my computer. As I was playing, I FaceTimed my friend Jay, who was also playing. Whenever I was playing with him, I would usually do this and leave my phone on my monitor, so it would be facing me and I could look at the screen as I play. I was playing on FaceTime for about 1 hour or 2 before I heard a sound from downstairs. As I was so engrossed in my game, I assumed my little brother got a ride back from his friend's house, and he was the one moving around the house. Or that it was our cat on its normal patrol. But I didn't go down to check though. A few minutes later, Jay suddenly said, "Mark, I think your little brother is sneaking up on you." I turned my head around, but I didn't see anyone. "What are you talking about?" I asked Jay, and he said he saw someone peering around for a second from behind the wall, separating my bedroom from the stairway. I called out my brother's name and he didn't answer. I stood up and went to check the stairwell, but I didn't see my brother either. I wasn't sure if Jay was initially joking or not, so I pressed him on the issue, but he kept saying he wasn't lying. So I left my room to check the rest of the upstairs, starting with my brother's room. His lights were out and his door was shut, so maybe he wasn't home after all. I checked the other rooms and I could find nothing, and the front door was still shut and locked. At this point, I started thinking Jay was trying to scare me or he was seeing things. That's when I realized I hadn't seen our cat while I was checking the upstairs. I went down to the den and found her behind one of the couches, which was an odd behavior for her, making me more paranoid. Then I heard something because the house was so silent. I could hear the slightest movement of another person in the house. I stood up from behind the couch and took one step forward. Then I heard a slight exhale. As soon as I heard this, I walked upstairs slowly and got to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, walked to my room, locked the door, and called the emergency number. Jay was still on FaceTime and I left him on it, so he could listen to my call with the correspondent. The police arrived very quickly, and I went down to open the door for them. As soon as they entered, they asked where are they. I told them downstairs in the den. The police started shouting to make their presence known. They found the intruder with his hands up behind another couch, where I heard his movements earlier. It was a male in his mid-20s. He had a large blade in his pocket, and God only knows what he was planning to do with it. Thank God he didn't hurt our cat while he was down there. His behavior down there had made me stop to listen. I probably wouldn't have heard the intruder otherwise. Number 2, FaceTime murder. I was FaceTiming my best friend Carl on a Sunday afternoon. We were both at home. We were talking about a big test that was coming up the next day at school. Carl asked, "Have you even studied for it at all yet?" "Dude, I've been studying my ass off. I'm probably still gonna fail anyway. I don't understand it at all," I replied. "What about you?" I asked him. "Barely. I would have studied more, but I have had to help my dad a lot," he told me. He wants to surprise my mom on her birthday by redoing the kitchen now that she's away at Florida. Just then, I saw someone walking behind him. It was kind of hard to make out exactly who it was, since I was seeing the person over my phone screen. I figured it was his dad, but I proceeded to ask about the person I saw. "I thought you said you were home alone," I asked him. "I am," and he replied. "Then why is your dad standing behind you?" I asked. Carl turned back, and then the man walked up to him with a gun in his hand. "Mitch!" Carl yelled my name as he looked back at me through the phone. His eyes were wide with fear. He looked really terrified and shocked to see the man at his house. At that moment, I didn't know what I could do to help him. I literally wanted to crawl through the phone and save him. I yelled his name out of panic, trying to figure out what to do, before the man could hurt my friend. I watched helplessly as the man shot my best friend in his head. I just watched my best friend get murdered live. The man looked straight at Carl's phone and said to me, "Don't tell anyone or else you will be next." Number 3, ghost call. My childhood best friend had a haunted house, and I love dealing with anything supernatural. The first experience we had was back in 2012 or 2013. I and my friend had been playing Minecraft for about 6 hours, only taking breaks to grab a snack or take a pee. The house was a 2-story with 2 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms. That night everyone was sleeping, or at least that's what we assumed, while we were in one of the family rooms with the TV off so we could hear a game, when my friend got a text from her dad that read, "Stop stomping around like donkeys." We looked at each other for a second, before my friend thought it could be her brother stomping around, so she went upstairs to tell him off. She soon came back and told me her brother was asleep. We muted our game and sat silently for a while. That was when we heard the same footsteps her dad heard. In the same spot between the bedrooms upstairs, we could hear that stomping all night. My best friend's dad turned that space into a game room for us teenagers to hang out. Her mom said some weird things started happening to her dad when he was cleaning out the room, though he said he doesn't remember much. He said Bibles and family photos he kept in this room always disappeared, and he will find them in the trash where no one would put them. Fast forward some years later, and I had to watch their dogs for my best friend's family while they were out on a cruise. Sometimes her boyfriend comes over to stay with me through the night, and every other night, my boyfriend stays with me. On the night that I stay over alone though, I always hear that stomping sound at the same spot upstairs. According to the family, it was the spirit of my best friend's mother who had lived there that was stomping on the floor. They conducted an EVP test but got nothing out of it. Fast forward to the present. My best friend's mom is now my boss, and I seldom get calls from her, especially if we leave the shop late. One night about 2 hours after we close up, I get a call from my boss, but I don't pick it up, because I wasn't on my phone when the call came through. About 7 minutes later, I get a FaceTime call from her, which I pick up. But the camera on her side doesn't come up, but I could hear some feedback. Since no one answered me, I hung up and texted my boss to see if it was a butt dial, but she didn't respond. I was anxious about the call throughout the night, so I made up a reason to call my boss and make sure she was okay. She said she was. I told her I would see her at my scheduled time. She didn't say anything about the call or text from the previous night. I got to work, and we usually have a group discussion about the duties for the day. I asked her about the call and text from last night, and the only thing she said was, "Yeah, I didn't know how to reply to that." She was talking about the text. My phone was plugged in a different room, she said. My heart sank, but I wanted confirmation. "Boss, what room was your phone plugged in?" She finally realized why I wanted confirmation. We both just looked at each other confused and stunned. She'd plugged her phone to charge in that same room with the stomping sounds. Of course, it could have been a malfunction, but spirits happen to tamper with technology, and I wasn't the last person she called before putting her phone to charge, so it wasn't just a redial. I think it was the stomping spirit who FaceTimed me, but I can never be sure.